Alright, what's going on everyone? My name is Mr. Rage22. Welcome back to my reviews and my channel in general. And we are continuing the blooper team trend. As you guys know, I have been playing a lot of blooper teams games. I recently played, finished, and reviewed Layers of Fear 1 and 2, and I thought both of them were very fine games. I reviewed both of them. Go check them out if you want to. But yes, we are continuing this whole blooper team thing, and I have decided to play Observer. Now, this is I have an interesting backstory with this game because back in the day, I was such a huge fan of Layers of Fear 1 and 2. I know that may sound weird since I said back then I didn't like Layers of Fear, but I'm talking about like last year in 2021. But yeah, I was just someone who was like a huge fan of Layers of Fear 1 and 2, and that is the only reason why I actually brought this game. I brought this game because I was told it was made by the exact same team at Blooper Team who actually made Layers of Fear, and I love that game to death, so I figured why not see what Blooper Team cooked up here. And man, I gotta say, guys, this was an unforgettable horror game. And not only that, but Observer is a one of a kind game. Not only that, but I'm making the bold statement of by saying this. Observer is probably one of the best psychological horror games ever made. And yes, Layers of Fear, that game was just pure insanity, but this game, not only is this game worse than actual insanity, but this game could actually affect you. Like, this is a game that actually fucks with your head and burrows its way into your head. This is one of the darkest games as well. This is such a deep psychological horror game. If you're someone who wants a psychological horror game that can not only scare the crap out of you, but also fuck with your actual mind, this game will be your love child. You will love this game to death if you are someone who wants a psychological horror game that not only scares you or terrifies you, but also disturbs you and really gets under your skin, because that is exactly what Observer does. And I was honestly thinking that this game would just be Layers of Fear, but in the future. But I gotta say, guys, like this, like as much as I love Layers of Fear, I gotta say this game is a huge improvement upon Layers of Fear. And as much as I love that game, it's like Layers of Fear, like that game is still one of my favorite psychological horror games. But this game is a huge improvement. You see, what Blooper Team did is they took all the good aspects of Layers of Fear, like the insanity, the mind fuckery, and they just put it all in here. Now, before we talk about anything else, I just want to actually talk about this game's scare factor, because this is not a game of, serial killers and ghosts and demons. No, this game's like scare factor and like even its story even it's realistic. Now, as you guys know, I don't spoil the story on my reviews. My reviews are spoiler free for the story, because I know that there are people out there who really cherish the game's story. So I do not spoil the story. But what I do tell you about the story is like what type of story it is, and if you'll and like like if you'll like it or not. Depending on your style. If you're someone who likes really dark stories, like really dark and disturbing, and sometimes just downright in like stories that are just about just insanity, then again, you are going to love Observer. This is one of the darkest horror games in general. I know I'm making a lot of bold statements here, but Observer is one of the darkest horror games ever made. And the reason for that is because its scares are not dependent on cliches like ghosts or demons or serial killers or monsters or anything. No, this game's scares are like they're realistic. This game has realistic scares because like the story as well. The story is basically based off of a dark future that may or may not happen. I mean, it's kind of cliche because, like, people think that the future is going to be really dark and all that stuff, and, like, technology is going to take over, and Observer is basically that. I'm trying not to spoil it, but, like, I'm just trying to explain a little bit at least. But, like, yeah, the story, though, it's not just your typical dark future story. This story is just so much more, because not only does this game explore the possibility of how our future may turn out, but it also shows like the downfall of actual humanity. Like the people in this game that you interact with, like it's unsettling to see just how far humanity has fallen. And it also shows how accurate people would, turn out to be in this kind of world. And that's another really great thing about Observer. Now we're gonna actually talk about the game's psychological elements. It's like these like the sections in Observer, like the psychological sections or the segments or whatever you want to call them. This game's psychological aspects and its psychological sections, they are some of the best, but also the most downright disturbing psychological sections I've ever seen in an actual psychological horror game. Like I said, I know I'm making bold statements by saying this is one of the best psychological horror games, but this is not just a typical psychological horror game. This game will mindfuck you. This game, it will burrow its way inside your head and it will just fuck your brain. It will just completely fuck your brain up. This game is one of the most disturbing mind trips I have ever been on. This game is basically what would happen if you took some really strong mushrooms, but the trip that it takes you on was nightmarish. This game is basically a nightmarish drug trip. That's basically what this game is. Or an acid trip or whatever. I don't do drugs, so I don't know what you call it, but it's just a drug trip. This game is just a nightmarish, disturbing drug trip. And like I said, if you love psychological horror, this game is going to be right up your alley. If you like games that fuck with your head and just fuck with your reality inside this game is going to be right up your alley. If you like psychological horror games, all I can tell you is just go out, buy this game. I swear to God, you will not be disappointed. But as I was saying, this game's psychological moments, it's not just it was in Layers of Fear, where the world was morphing around you and stuff. But I would like to say that does kind of make a comeback here, and I was very pleasantly surprised. The game kind of has some moments that are reminiscent of Layers of Fear, because there are some moments in this game where you look at something, you turn around, and then the thing that you were looking at is now changed. So it does retain some of its moments from Layers of Fear. So that's another great thing. But it's just so much more than that. The psychological moments in this game are not just scary and terrifying, but they're actually disturbing. This game will just it'll freak you the fuck out. Its psychological moments are not just that. These moments, like I said, they will fuck your brain. If you're someone who actually struggles with mental health issues, I actually recommend you shouldn't play this game actually, because that's how bad this game's psychological moments are. And what I mean by bad is strong, okay? Because bad is a bad word. I mean strong. This game has such strongest psychological moments. It will fuck with your head and it will fuck your head. This is one of the most disturbing mind trips I have ever been on, because this game truly does just fuck with your head. The psychological moments are not only scary. I mean, yes, they're scary, but they're also just so disturbing. They get under your skin and they make you question yourself even, because this game is all about the mind. This game basically explores what it's like to see inside the mind of someone who is going insane. Similar to what it was in Layers of Fear, but that was just you playing as someone who is insane. But in this game, you basically go inside people who have minds that are damaged beyond your understanding. And the thing about people with damaged minds is their minds, inside their heads, people who have damaged minds, inside their head, it can be just as nightmarish in there as the thing that actually caused their minds to be damaged in the first place. The human mind is no toy. And there's a lot of terrifying things. There's a lot of terrifying things about the human mind, and this game explores that. And it displays it in such an amazing way. This game's psychological moments are some of the most downright disturbing and terrifying things I have ever seen in an actual psychological horror game. If you thought Layers of Fear done psychological horror well, this game does it 10 times better. This game has some of the best psychological moments, and it is one of the best psychological horror games ever made, because they actually scared the shit out of you. It's not just a psychological horror game that you play and it scares you and stuff. No, this game actually fucks with your head, and that is exactly what a psychological horror game is supposed to do, and this game does it absolutely perfectly. So all I could say is, if you're someone who wants a really great and terrifying and disturbing psychological horror game, go out right now, pick this game up. You will not be disappointed. You will absolutely love this game. Now let's talk about the gameplay. So, Observer is in many ways a walking sim. Basically, you are exploring this condemned apartment building, and I know that may sound a little boring, but again, like Layers of Fear 2, this game does take you on a journey, because of all the areas that it transports you in. And I'm not just talking about like, when you go inside these people's heads and like, you're like inside their head and like, all the psychological shit starts happening. No, that's something different. I'm talking about the actual environments that you explore in this game because this game does have a good amount of exploration. When the game is not disturbing the crap out of you and fucking with your head, the game does have a good amount of exploration, and walking simulator fans will be pleased. There are some really fun moments here and there. While you're inside people's heads, there are going to be times where you are exploring, but like, the game is just going to be playing tricks on you and like scaring the shit out of you with its psychological horror. But like, I'm talking about like when you're actually exploring like the apartment building itself. I mean, there's like a courtyard type building. And you could also like interact with people, kind of like a Telltale game, like Telltale's The Walking Dead. You could like interact with people, like you could like choose like your responses and like you could choose what you want to say to them, stuff like that. The game is very very interactive, and you're basically interacting with these people. You could like knock on their door, and like you could like talk to them and stuff. So yeah, you could like the game is very interactive, and the game does have a lot of fun environments. Again, just like Layers of Fear 2, this game does actually transport you to a lot of interesting environments and interesting areas, and that's basically how the game, that's how the game stays fresh, and that's how the game prevents itself from getting boring because like the game just like puts you in so many different areas. It's fun to explore them, and it also keeps the game, it keeps the game interesting. So the next thing we're going to talk about, and one thing I want to say is like this game's story. Again, if you're someone who not only likes psychological horror but also a really deep and disturbing story, you are just going to love this game so much. Like I said, Observer is the darkest horror game ever made. It is the darkest and the deepest psychological horror game. And back to the gameplay, yes, there's also some survival horror elements. So yes, this is why this game is so good. So if you're someone who also likes a little bit of survival horror, a little bit of Outlast, then you are going to love this game even more because the game does have some pretty cool survival horror moments. They are a little finicky and they are a little frustrating, but you got to give Blooper Team a break because this was only their second game, so they were still getting into the whole survival thing, and you can tell that they want to like ramp up their gameplay from Layers of Fear, which was their first game. And as you know, Layers of Fear did not have any survival moments. That game was 100% psychological horror. So you could tell that Bloober Team was trying to get into a little bit of the survival horror as well. They're trying to put a little bit inside their game, mixing it up a little bit, mixing up psychological horror and survival horror. But for the most part, the thing about Blooper Team is these people really know how to make a great psychological horror game because you have games like Layers of Fear 1 and 2, and now you have this, which is probably one of the best psychological horror games ever made. Blooper Team is a company that should stick to their psychological games because Blooper Team really knows how to make a really fun but also a really disturbing mind trip like this game because Layers of Fear 1 and 2, yes, they were fun psychological horror games, but this one was a lot more darker. And that's the thing about Observer. This game's atmosphere, it's like everything, even the tone, everything about this game just screams dark, dark and disturbing. And if you're someone who's into that, then you are just going to love this game so much. And of course, besides minor survival horror elements, the game does have some puzzles. And the thing I didn't like is the puzzles do get a little frustrating and a little repetitive at times. They're just kind of boring. I mean, not a lot of difference between them. Another thing about this game is there's also like side cases, and another thing is this game is also a detective game. That's another thing I forgot to mention. Not only is this game just combines so much stuff. It combines great psychological moments, some of the best I've seen. It's got some great survival horror moments, and it's also a detective game. You play as this detective named Daniel Lazarski, voiced by Rutger Hauer, who was the star of Blade Runner. God rest his soul, by the way. But yeah, you play as this detective, and like there are some moments in the game where it's kind of like one of the Batman Arkham games. You've got like your vision, you're like the detective vision from the Arkham games. You've got that, and you're basically like you're like solving cases kind of. And there's also side cases, so you could also choose to like you could focus on the main story, or you could even do side cases. So this game just offers so much content, and for the most part, the side cases, they're decent. And the thing I like about the side cases is they're their own story because the people in this game, like the people that you interact with in this game, like the people, they're so messed up. Like it goes back to my point about how humanity has just fallen in this world, and like the people, like they're so messed up, and like their cases that you gotta like solve if you want to. They're their own story. It's almost like an anthology because they got their own stories kind of, but of course it all connects to the main story of the game. So that's another great thing I like. So yeah, this is basically a detective game, a horror game. It's just so much stuff. This game, like Layers of Fear 2, this is a game that's going to constantly keep the player busy. There's never a moment in this game where it's going to be boring or just not very fun. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the game's performance. Now, there is two versions of this game. There's one version for Xbox One, PS4, and Switch, and for the most part, it was, it was fine. I mean, it was kind of choppy like Layers of Fear. This, I was playing the remastered version, and as you could tell, being a remastered, the graphics are, decent. They're much better than the older version, so the graphics are good. Although I did come into some frame rate issues as well. Like the game just has like some stuttering here and there, and also my game did crash one time. So the game does have some slight technical issues with the remastered version, but nothing that's gonna like make the game unplayable. But yeah, for the most part, the game's visuals are very very good, and the game stood at a constant 60 frames per second. I only had some slight stuttering in like specific areas. So, yeah. Also, the game's soundtrack, I've said this before, Blooper Team never fails on their soundtrack. This game's soundtrack is no exception. Like Layers of Fear, there are some very dark ambient themes and almost like a mechanical theme. Like it sounds like a glitchy mechanical theme, and it really fits with like the atmosphere and of the game itself. So, the game has a great soundtrack as well. And going back to the scare factor, not only does this game have some psychological moments that will actually terrify, disturb, and fuck with your head, but this game also has a lot of disturbing imagery as well. Like, you're gonna be seeing some really fucked up shit in this game. And like I said, if you're someone who actually gets scared easily or has actual mental health issues, maybe you should hold off on this game because this game's psychological horror is just so disturbing and so terrifying. It might actually harm you. It might actually harm your mental health. So, like, if that's not enough to convince you to go out and buy this game, buy it. Just like I don't know what else will. Also, the game at its retail price is $29.99, but trust me, this is a game that's worth $60. This game should be worth like this game should like have the same price as a AAA game. But Blooper Team is being nice, and like this game is only $30, and for only $30, $29.99, you could go on one of the most disturbing but also fun mind trips of all time, because this game, it's one of the most disturbing but also fun mind trips of all time. If you're someone who loves psychological horror, I gotta tell you, you guys are gonna get an absolute kick out of this game if you love psychological horror, because like I said, Observer, one of the best psychological horror games of all time. I give Observer a 9 out of 10. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for watching my review for Observer. I really hope you enjoyed it, and let me know, what do you think of Observer? It's definitely one of the darkest horror games I ever played, one of the best horror games of all time. Blooper Team, you guys really outdid yourself. If Blooper Team ever does make an Observer 2, like a sequel, I really hope it'll be just as good, because this game also does have multiple endings, just like Layers of Fear. And the one I got, I think I got the bad ending. So, but I definitely want to see, like, Blooper Team could really do a lot with this story, because, like, there's just so much about the story that's unexplored. And as you know, I don't spoil the story, but let me know what you guys think of the story. It's one of the best I've seen, and also one of the most disturbing. The thing I love about this game is, like, it's horror element. It's realistic, and that's what scares you. That's how it scares the shit out of you, because it's just so realistic, and I love it. And I hope you guys too. This is a fine game. Really, this is a game that you really shouldn't miss out on. Definitely give it a try. Let me know what you think. Fans of survival horror, psychological horror, although this game is more for psychological horror fans, you may like it even if you're someone who likes Outlast like myself. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. This was Mr. Rage22. I hope you enjoyed my review. And yeah, I have much more game reviews coming very soon. As you guys know, I'm uploading a lot more. I got a lot more videos coming. I'm not dead anymore. My channel's not dead. So yeah. Anyways, guys, once again, thank you so much for watching. This was Mr. Rage22 signing off. Bye-bye, guys.